Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. You can see I have a special guest right there. He's taking a drink of milk or whatever. He's former out. What was your position with the Bernie Sanders campaign?
Well, I was the National Political Outreach Coordinator. I worked as the deputy to the political director.
So, Nick, a lot of people keep poo-pooing the idea of a third party, but in fact, in historical terms, third parties is what's always been the thing to save America. Am I right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Third parties have led progressive change in U.S. history. They've always been at the helm. It was the Free Soil Party, the Whig Party, that led the charge on abolition of the abolition of slavery in the 1850s. And then it was the Republican Party, of course, the Republican Party that replaced the Whig Party, that wouldn't accept an anti-slavery platform. And then, fast forward 50 years, it was third parties. It was the Progressive Party. It was there was a People's Party back then, actually. It was the Bull Moose Party, fighting for issues like women's suffrage, the direct election of senators, the unemployment insurance, child labor laws, Social Security, the 40-hour work week. Down the line, these achievements were actually brought up by third parties. Third parties have been at the helm of progressive change throughout U.S. history, and they succeed either by forcing the major parties to adopt their platform, or by replacing them outright in the way that the Republican Party did. And in fact, when the Republican Party replaced the Whigs, Lincoln's Republican Party, I think that it was a much more daunting challenge than it is now. I mean, back then the country was sharply divided over slavery. Today, the issues, the hot-butted political issues that divide people, I mean, people are basically unanimous on things like getting money out of politics,
Yeah.
And so the coalition's much larger. Not just that, but we have the internet today. We have instantaneous, spread of action, which made the Bernie campaign possible. And that brings me to a really important point, which is that Bernie already built the party, Jimmy. He did it during the primaries by popularizing the message, by building a national donor base, by building a national volunteer infrastructure. Bernie built the party. The party exists. It just needs to be made official. He brought the coalition together already. We've done the hard work. And he did that in 1 year, starting from nothing. Starting from nothing. He did that in 1 year. Imagine what we can do in 3.5 years when we start at that level.
It's because people are hungry for real policy solutions. And right now the Democrats are offering zero policy solutions. And what they're offering is a distraction called Russia. So when you see the Democrats talking about Russia and you see the mainstream establishment news also talking about Russia, what that shows you is that there is an establishment and they do have an agenda. And that agenda is to not give you single payer. That agenda is to not allow the people to take over the government and to keep the government and the corporate media in control by corporations, multinational, that want more war, bigger banks, more fracking, more college debt. That's what they want. They want to keep you sicker, paying twice as much for your health care. That's exactly what's going on. I want to make one quick point about you said when the Republican Party took over from the Whigs. Not only that, they were a regional party at that time, Nick. They weren't even a national party, the Republican Party, but they had the ideas, right? And so that's why they won, because Lincoln was charismatic. Lincoln had the ideas. He had a vision, and most of the people were on board. So they won. They weren't even a national party. So this whole idea, again, of people of you can't do anything, you can't. It's the same people who say you can never have single payer. Those are the same people saying you can't do a third party. It's the defeatist corporate who want the status quo to stay as it is. Because if this succeeds, they're all out of a job. Right, Nick?
That's right. That's completely right. And the Democratic Party, let's go back to California. What happens when the Democratic Party does take over? You have right now in California a Democratic governor and Democratic legislature. Why haven't they passed single payer? It's been in your state platform for decades. They haven't passed. Why didn't they do it when they controlled the country on a national level? When Obama swept in and expanded his caucus, the Democratic caucus in Congress and in the Senate. It's because they don't really stand for those things. They don't stand for those things. When they get the majority, they don't pass it. And nor do they need the Republicans' help in sweeping in what is now, gone beyond plutocracy and is becoming a kleptocracy. So the Democrats' plan, as has emerged since the general election, the Democrats' plan to combat Trump and to combat Republican donors is to put in Democratic billionaires. Let's elect our own billionaires. What they're doing is they're cutting the politicians out of the process. Generally, the billionaires would buy themselves a politician who would then go and legislate in their favor. Now the billionaires are just cutting the politicians out of the equation, and they're taking office. In Florida, it was Stephen Biddle. It was a billionaire took California, party chair over
Wait a
there.
minute, Nick. Wait a minute. Keith Ellison's very progressive, and he told me that I should vote for that billionaire in Florida.
Well, that's a great point, because it shows Keith Ellison wanted a real shot at becoming chair. If Keith Ellison had not moderated his stances, he wouldn't have had a shot. And that's the whole problem with the party, is that in order to be effective, in order to attain power, you have to compromise your principles to the point at which attaining power becomes pointless in the first place.
So what happened was Keith Ellison backed a billionaire to take over. By the way, they had to suspend their own rules in Florida to do it. Have a billionaire take over the Democratic Party in Florida. And that's and Keith Ellison backed that guy instead of the person who wasn't bought. So that tells you everything you need to know about Keith Ellison and the Democratic Party. As far as I'm concerned, Keith Ellison might be a nice person, but he's working inside of an evil system, and he doesn't want to break up the system. He's working right inside the system to the point where he backed a frickin' billionaire to take over the party in Florida. So that's there's a rot at the center of the Democratic Party, and it's corporate cash. And Keith Ellison doesn't want to get rid of it. In fact, he said, we're going to have an election. We'll have a vote to see if we get rid of it. So he's not really a visionary. He's not really a progressive. He's a go-along Democrat who's okay with corporatism, because he also doesn't want to lose his position of power inside the Democratic Party. Now, you don't have to say yes to any of that stuff, but everybody who knows anything knows that. And Keith Ellison knows it himself. So does Tom Perez know that he's working against progressives and that Tom Perez is totally bought by corporate America. He's not working for the people. They are there to thwart progressives. The Democratic Party right now is controlled opposition for progressives. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with controlled opposition. Yeah, I think the first time we spoke, I said that the Democratic Party has a unique position in our system of government. The Democratic Party has a mission above. It's not, traditional electoral organization, and that you would think that its, objective is to attain power, to implement its policies. Rather, it has a mission above winning. And that mission is preventing progressives from winning, because it is essential. It's the control mechanism. And no plutocracy, no oligarchy, by virtue of being a government of the 1% against the majority of the 99%, you need some kind of way of containing the majority, And so there has to be some kind of mechanism. No plutocracy would survive without an electoral mechanism of keeping the left down. And that's what the Democratic Party is in our own system.
Yes, the Democratic Party takes progressives, who actually are the majority of the people in the party, and they keep their agenda thwarted, right? Because by pulling just like they did in the California Democratic caucus just last week or 2 weeks ago now, where they thwarted the will of the progressive people, which is definitely progressive in California, and they installed literally a pharmaceutical lobbyist after they told the progressives to shut the F up and get out. If anyone needs a bigger way, so this is what I don't understand. What is Bernie waiting for? Because 2018 is supposed to be a bloodbath for the Democrats, but they are doing everything they can to keep suppressing the vote. And what I mean by that is they're not giving people a reason to vote. They're giving people a reason to hate Trump. They already did that. People already hated Trump, and they lost. So they're still doing that, and they don't have a vision. So now I want to personally, are you getting a lot of pushback? Because you're a political person your whole life. Are you getting a lot of people angry at you now because you're doing this?
Yeah, so some people, of course, are. The Democratic Party's not too happy with me. But But most of the reaction from within the progressive community, and from like real life working people, the people who we're supposed to represent in government, those people, the reaction from those people is overwhelmingly favorable. I mean, Nina Turner just went on this Sunday on to CNN State of the Union. Nina Turner, by the way, loves us on social media. She's retweeted our donate link. She's retweeted. She just recently retweeted Bernie, Nina, and Tulsi starting a People's Party equals victory. So she just went on State of the Union on Sunday, and she talked about how people across the country, wherever she goes, are saying, I don't trust these two parties anymore. We need a new party. And that's what the polls show too, 57% of the people. So my question is, how are we supposed to revolutionize the country by disregarding the will of the majority? What if instead of trying to fight what the majority want, what if we join them instead? What if instead of struggling against the progressive current, why are we letting working people across the country be more progressive than our movement? What if instead we joined them and we went with the current? And if we did that, Jimmy, Bernie has like an 80 to 87% favorability rating inside the party. So that party is his. It's his party. It's just stuck within a framework that doesn't permit it to express our views, our political views, our issues. And so with independents, it's 57% to 70% favorability. If Bernie was to start a new party that got just half of Democrats and half of independents, that would be the largest party in America by far. And a lot of people think that, the spoiler effect is going to hold you back, but they don't. That's kind of a misunderstanding of what the spoiler effect is. And so part of the beauty of this, Jimmy, is that Bernie would bring over about half the Democratic Party, or at least a very large portion of the Democratic Party. So you're cutting the Democratic Party in half, and then you're adding to that. You're adding independents, you're adding young people, you're adding third-party voters, you're adding conservatives who just want a better government. You're adding people who've given up on voting. And so then what you're talking about is you're saying that this new party, having taken half the Democratic Party and then adding all of those things, is larger than what remains of the Democratic Party. And the way the spoiler effect works is that it leaves room for only two parties in the United States. It whittles down, one on the left and one on the right. And it makes factions on the left or the right consolidate into one, around the largest faction. We would automatically almost be the largest faction because we're taking half the Democratic Party, adding a huge number of independents. And that means that the rest will consolidate around us.
I don't think people realize just how small of a party the Democratic Party is. Last time I checked, they were under 30% of the country. They were somewhere around 26, 27%, and independents, upwards over 40% of the people in America consider themselves an independent. So if, again, like you said, if you got half of those people and half the Democrats, we now have the biggest party in the country. So if a third party is polling higher than the Democrats, then they're not a third party anymore.
And yes. And I got to say, too, it's the Democratic Party. And actually, if we did this in 2020, the Democratic Party might not make the 15% debate cut. How hilarious would that be?
Hilarious.
So
I think this is great. And people are starting to figure out that they can do this. The next live Jimmy Dore show is June 19th in Burbank, California, and July 15th in San Francisco at the Great Star Theater. For all links for all tickets to those shows and our full schedule right there, there's a link to JimmyDoreComedy.com. We'll see you at those live shows.